this video, we are going to talk about HTML entities. This is part of an ongoing series of the Halloween theme. If you haven't seen any of those videos yet, be sure to check it out on my channel after you check out this one. So let's get into HTML entities. So here is the premise. There are some characters and symbols inside of coding that you may need to use inside of your projects, but you can't really use them because they might give you an error or they might not even exist on your keyboard or anything like that. Some of them include like the greater than less than sign, slash, the copyright, money sign, even a quote because quotes are symbolizing strings, some other symbols that you may not have access to as well. And these are some of the characters that you can't use unless you do them a certain way. And if you try to use them, you might get a syntax error or a command not found. In HTML, if you have a greater than or less than sign, you might think that it's a HTML tag. So if you want to implement that inside of your text, then it might not display it properly because that might give you a syntax error because it might think that you're still opening or closing a tag. Some of the languages, they might be a little bit more lenient and they may assume that you're doing something else. But in most languages, something that you shouldn't really apply is something that you should always prepare for just in case for those situations that you might need to use it, but it might not let you. The other thing is that if I want to do like a euro, I only have access to E. I can't really do a euro, right? And this isn't the real symbol of a euro. And I could find it online and have that implemented inside of an image or something. That might take a little while. That might take a little bit too long. And even the copyright one, like I only have access to C, so that might not be the best option for me to use. And not a lot of people recognize C as in copyright. They recognize the actual copyright symbol. So some of these implementations, they're not really realistic or they might not work the way that you want them to work. Now you do have a few options that you can do. The first is entities, is the main topic of today's video. And the second is escape sequences. These are certain sequences inside of strings that you can use to have them be a little bit of a space or a little bit of a tab or even slash or certain symbols, but it is very limited of what you can use for escape sequences. The better thing to use is actually entities. So with entities, you can have access to all of the spaces and tabs as well as any symbols that you can think of and more. So that's why I would really recommend entities. And it's pretty simple. For the copyright symbol, here you can actually refer to it three ways. And we'll talk about those three ways here. And as long as you have it referred one way, then it will show up properly inside of your code in the final display. And I would recommend you use entities more than escape sequences. I would use escape sequences here and there, mostly for strings, but for actual visualization, I would turn to entities itself. So entities are very much solely part of the HTML language, but you can actually convert that into other things if you need to. Or if you want to use HTML or other languages that has HTML in it, you can use entities in it as well. So that's something to keep in mind when you are using entities, is that it's mainly for HTML and web development, but there probably is something that you can use in your language of programming. Now here is the structure. If you want to use an entity, you need to have the and symbol. This is the and symbol that's right above the 7. And then after that, it will be the entity name or whatever it is you're referencing it, and then a semicolon at the end. That is the one right next to the L. All that together, it will make up a certain kind of combination, and HTML can recognize that combination to be a sort of entity, and it will show up as part of a single symbol like this. And this is a lot more better for you to recognize as a copyright symbol rather than just having a C. And there's multiple ways that you can recognize an entity or reference an entity. That is going to be with either the entity name, like this one right here, like the copy, or the entity number, which is this one right here. And there is a bunch of entities and they all have their own unique number. or it could be a construct, which is going to be a combination of letters and symbols, as well as numbers here too. And they have a certain construct for each of the entity that you're using. The most common one that I've seen is either going to be using the entity name, because it's very self-explanatory and it's well enough thought out that you know that this is going to be something related to copy or the copyright. And the second one would probably be the entity number, and then lastly would be the construct, since it's just so much more to type, and developers are a little bit lazy. They rather type less than more, and they rather be more specific than really broad, because if I look at this or this, I don't know what it is I'm typing, right? But if I do this one here of the entity name, I know that that has something to do with the copy. So that is the entity structure. You can use one of these references, but regardless of what kind of references you need, you always need a and symbol and a semicolon at the end. Now here are few of the many entities that you can use. Symbols like quotes, because again, quotes are very reserved for strings and programming languages. So if you actually do a quote, it might think that you're opening or closing a quote. So that's why using an entity instead to represent a quote, it will still give you the same result, but it won't give you an error. It won't assume that you're opening or closing a quote. Here is the R symbol, and then we have pi here, and euro, and infinity, and even some wacky arrows. And I know some languages, they need some accent marks, so you can do some accent marks inside of entities as well. And these are just the few of the many entities that you can use. I'll link down a reference website down in the description box. That way you can see all of the cool ones that you can use. And this is from another source. This isn't something that I created, but it's something that I really recommend. So take a look at that. That is a good one to take a look at. And again, don't memorize all of them, because there's just so many information and so many entities that there are for you to use. I would just know where to reference them, which is going to be the reference sheet, and maybe memorize the ones that you would use the most, like maybe euro or dollar if you're working in that type of environment, or the copyright one, or even the space or tab one. Those are very much used a lot with. And I would recognize and remember what the number is or what the entity name is. That way you can reference it again. And then if not, then you can always look it up, right? You can always take a look at the reference sheet or to a quick Google search, and it will give you the entity that it is that you're looking for. And then you can use it as much as you want and it won't give you any errors. And that is HTML entities. That is all I have for this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!